Our edge rusher rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft are coming your way today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase.
Joe, big day for the brand today. I don't expect you to know this, and I didn't include it in the pre-show. I'm at 250 players.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's a big milestone. Nicely done.
I can do this 5 times with my hands.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Be done. Like, Draft Dudes do that.
There it is. It's the most unnecessary math. That's the worst part. When the math isn't even necessary, and then you still
do it anyway, and you're still wrong. Yeah. I could tell you all about void years and compensatory pick calculations and all that, but ask me to count to 50 with my fingers and how many times I have to flash.
10 of them, Kyle. 10 of them.
I can't do it. So.
You went with it.
Happy hump day to you as I have over 250 players for the 2025 NFL. I don't know if you know this, but if I'm aspiring for 300, that means I have less than 50 left.
You go like this.
I have 10 fingers.
30 times. Right? 30.
What just one. I can do this 50 times and count how many players I have left to do. You want to talk about some edge pressures?
Oh boy. Oh, we better.
All right. Let's this is a really fascinating class. If you had to pick one as far as depth that you like, do you like this better or worse than the defensive tackle class?
I like this better. I think the edge depth is better. The talent cliffs, talent cliff at edge is different, I think, than D tackle. Not that there's not good D tackles. I think there are. And there's not nearly as many D tackles that are drafted every year than D ends. But I think relative to that, the D tackle class is very good. I think you got a lot of depth here. You got a lot of variety here. A lot of versatile guys, a lot of guys that really just kind of fit a certain style of defense. So you'll find some flavor here, whatever you're looking for.
Without spoiling the whole thing, I have 19 guys with first, second, or third round grades. So
I have 18.
It is a good year to need a pass rusher of some variety, depending on what kind of player you're looking for. So we're going to start with our top fives and put a little shine on the guys at the top of the class. Would you like me to start things off?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. I'm going to go with Abdul Carter, Penn State, number 1. I am of the unpopular opinion that Shemar Stewart does indeed know how to play football. He's my second ranked edge rusher in this class. Michael Williams is third, tied with Mike Green from Marshall. So tied for third. And then fifth for me is Jalen Walker from the University of Georgia.
Very interesting. We've got some differences here, Kyle Crabbs.
Yeah.
Number 1, we're not different. Abdul Carter. That guy's good, man.
There you go.
He's so good. We'll talk about him.
First year playing full-time in the
Yeah, man. And we'll get to him. Jalen Walker, I have at number 2. Number 2, I have Jalen Walker. Number 3, I have Shemar Stewart out of Texas A&M.
Do you think he knows how to play?
I do.
It's dumb scores. Sorry,
I do.
I'll shut up.
I do think he does. I hope so. My third ranked edge in a first round grade. Man, he better be able to play football. Number 4, I have Donovan Izaraku out of Boston College. And at number 5, I have Michael Williams out of Georgia.
All right. So Mike Green not in your 5.
And admittedly, I think some of the off the field is influencing that. I know that that's not factored into yours, but I can't get out of my head. So he's down a little bit. I think he's a better player than where I have him ranked. But in terms of risk assessment,
his name has the red tag on it on my board, where it's like some guys have the medical. There's an off the field there that makes it a very unenviable conversation for teams deciding when and where to draft. But to go back up to the top of the board with Abdul Carter, that was a linebacker before this year. Just converts, casually drops dominant tape, especially after like the first month of the season, once he felt like he really got into the swing of things and he hit conference play, man. Like, incredibly gifted player that I think has a high floor and an even higher ceiling than what we've had a chance to see.
I think I got the full Abdul Carter experience because when I first watched him, it was early in the season where I remember thinking, yeah, I see a lot of upside here. And being mindful of that he just transitioned to on the edge. And then in preparation of today, I watched his tape and I got further into the season and it's like, geez, he's got unbelievable get off, like very, very special ability to get off the football. And I mean, the amount of stress that these offensive tackles have to just try to get enough depth and width to frame him, dude, they're falling all over themselves. I mean, this guy profiles as a very, very high level edge rusher that I think has some alignment versatility. I think you do a disservice to him to not give him chances to line up in multiple places. And I mean, let him attack the B gaps. I know the low hanging fruit is kind of what Dallas does with Micah Parsons, but it's pretty obvious that you need to use him in a similar role. And I think you're going to have a really dynamic playmaker.
Yeah, for sure. So edge 2 for you is Jalen Walker.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the same things you just said is applicable with Jalen Walker.
I agree. And I think Jalon gives you a little bit more appeal to play traditionally as a stack backer. Like I like him, and I think Jamie Collins was a name that we invoked or you invoked and we talked about him a while ago. That type of role, Frankie Louvu type stuff where, you know, I think you can move him around. I don't think you're going to, you're not going to draft him and ask him to play like a traditional 4-3 defensive end. I think that would be a disservice. I don't think he's got the mass or the length to do that. But if you want to get creative, I think you get an impact player. So this would be a great example of like, for certain teams, I don't think he would be my number 2 edge, but for this all 32 idea, that's kind of where I slotted him.
Yep. I think that's totally fair. And there's variance. And I know he's a player who, you know, as I stacked and ranked for Miami, as I converted my grades into a team specific board, Jalen Walker's higher on the Dolphins team specific with the Anthony Weaver stuff. And
he's lower on the Bills specific for me. Much lower. Yeah.
Yep. Because it's they play 4-2 and they're off ball linebackers. They're guys that run and play in space and cover a lot of ground. And their edge guys are heavy handed, long arm guys that set the edge and help you funnel the run. Yeah. So it's a great example. How about these two super-sized 270-ish Shemar Stewart, Michael Williams? I think the foil between those two guys is pretty fun. They're my edge 2 and edge 3. But we talk about success and translating and guys that have length and have power at their disposal. I think both of those guys have easy power to tap into. And I think it gives them a very traditional projection for where the success lies early for them. And then I think for both of them, it's a matter of who crafts the better rush plans moving forward. And I think that will be kind of the fork in the road for dividing and quantifying these two guys as their careers unfold.
That's a good way to put it. And I think there's a lot of upward mobility for both players where Michael Williams, and he kind of had foot deal in 2023 and then an ankle deal early in 2024. Yeah. And then with Shemar Stewart, what's the playing weight here? Like, did he play at 290 at Texas A&M and now he's 267 and like there's even more athleticism to tap into to maximize the physical upside? I think that there's a lot of upward mobility for both of those guys, which gets me exciting. I want ceiling, you know, and I think you get it from both of those players.
But I think both guys give you floor as run defense.
Sure. Oh, no question.
That's I think the important notation to make here is both guys very proficient at setting the edge and playing the run and being impactful players there.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. We will get deeper into the class where maybe there'll be some good variants to debate. We'll talk about that next here. Be sure to stick with us. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Gametime Picks is the easiest way to find and buy tickets to live events. The curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events. Plus, you get peace of mind with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, so Izaraku for me is edge 7, but I do have a 1-2 on Donovan Izaraku. So a player that I do regard quite highly. You had him edge 4.
Yeah.
How about I round out my 10?
Yeah.
And we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
So I had Jalen Walker at 5. So Nic Scourton, Texas A&M, I have as edge 6. Donovan Izaraku at edge 7. Both of those players have late 1, early 2 valuations. And then you're into kind of a messy bucket of 4 names that are divided by a half a point. These are all second-round grades. James Pierce, Tennessee, is edge 8 for me. JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State is edge 9. And then Ashton Gelati from Louisville is edge 10 for me.
I like it. I like it. At 6 for me is Nic Scourton out of Texas A&M. At 7 is Landon Jackson from Arkansas. That's a player I've surprised myself that I liked as much as I did.
Landon Jackson is tied with Gelati and Tuimoloau for me.
Close, yeah. 8, I have Mike Green out of Marshall. Number 9, I have JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. And at 10, I have James Pierce out of Tennessee.
Okay.
Let's talk Nic Scourton because I've been on a journey with Nic Scourton.
Yes.
You got to watch Purdue.
Remember the first time we watched him?
You got to watch Purdue tape. You got to watch Purdue tape. I think you just get a better understanding of what he is. And I think it's easy to see his play demeanor, like a very urgent, physical, violent type player. I just thought Purdue unlocked and showed so much more of the playmaking that I think he offers. And so getting a chance I checked in on a couple of games late in 2024, and then I went back and watched a couple of 2023 games, and it got me to a place where I get it on Nic Scourton. I'm not talking about a high first-round pick, but if you tell me late first, early 2, I think that's an appropriate range for him.
You have a name you like?
A comp?
Not the A&M version either, which, again, let's give some more grace to Nic Scourton, but then also looking at what Walter Nolan looked like when he left A&M to go to Ole Miss and project that to Shemar Stewart too, right? Like I did pretty robust group of talent here, and none of them were productive, disruptive players on A&M's front.
Do you have one? Because I know that don't you have to have one for every player?
I do.
Yeah, so that's a different world. I have some that I wrote down as I liked them, but I don't think I wrote anyone down for him.
How about like Purdue Nic Scourton is like Melvin Ingram?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's dense build, not a ton of length. The motor's off the charts.
Kind of surprising depth to your pass rush bag.
Yeah. Well, so to give some information here, Purdue had him listed at 280. Texas A&M had him listed at 285, and he comes to the combine at 257.
Yeah. I don't think he played at 280 as last year at Purdue either.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan.
So that's Nic Scourton. So we both end up top 6. You had him 6?
Yeah.
Okay, so we both have top 6 edge for both of us. Just don't put him in a scheme that works like A&M's did, and you'll be good. Do you want to do Izaraku? Do you want to get to Landon Jackson, who I'm totally game to kind of dig into here? Because I know he's a really polarizing player for a lot of people.
Why? So I don't know why he's polarizing. Maybe explain that to me. Because he's got high hips and he doesn't run circles around people.
Doesn't bend great, and he's a better tight alignment pass rusher than he is a guy who runs a 4.5 and runs underneath the kitchen table at full speed.
Ah, boy, there's so many different ways to win, right? Don't do this, right? We did this. This feels silly to me.
It's like the Vic Beasley thing, right? Like,
man, right? Like
the guy gets propped up. That kind of player gets propped up every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's sexy as hell to run around a guy, man. It really is. But more often than not, sacks in the NFL come from abilities to reduce and shave angles and play with power and get on the same level as a quarterback and have the ability to play with the extension and get off a block and make a tackle and have some tackle radius. Like there's other ways to do this. And I think that's important. With Landon Jackson, I saw a lot of Montez Sweat, like stylistically, where
see the LSU.
Oh, Landon Jackson, yeah.
Yeah,
dude.
Like Will Campbell a couple times. It was like, oh wow,
he's not super his hips aren't going to bend and his ankles aren't going to flex and he's going to carry speed through a steep angle. But I do think he's got that ability to get to an edge and quickly hinge and pivot and get around it. He's not completely deficient in that capacity. And I thought he was a really good run defender. And what I like about Landon Jackson, this is probably my favorite thing to kind of bring it all together. I think he's an extremely self-aware player. He knows that he's not running circles around people, and he doesn't try to. So he's not running out of lanes and opening up, the outside escape opportunities for the quarterback. He's a very self-aware player.
Yeah, and then the first 2 days of Senior Bowl practice, I think everybody bailed. Not everybody bailed, but a lot of people bailed because he's trying to rush as a wide 9 pass rusher, and it's like he loses his balance as he's trying to dip the inside shoulder, and it was just affirmation of like, okay, you're not what you're not. And then you get to the third day of practice and he starts hitting guys with inside counters, and then he has a great showing in the game itself, in a game setting.
Yeah.
So I have a 2 on Landon Jackson as my 11th rated edge in this, or technically tied for 9th rated edge in this class, tied with Gelati and Tuimoloau.
He's 2 as well. A second round grade for me as well as my edge 7. Let's talk to. I have this written down.
Tuimoloau.
Yeah.
He grew on me.
What's your elevator pitch on him?
Let me pull up I will read the synopsis player there, or synopsis of the player there.
Tuimoloau. There it is. Tuimoloau. RAS score 933, 6'4", 265, 33 3/4 on the arm length. He had a great season, right? 22 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks on a national championship defense this year.
Projects as an even front end, best rushing with his hand in the dirt, likely be best weaponized in a defensive scheme that attacks protections to help mitigate some of his athletic limitations, and instead rely on his power and football IQ to run picks, stunts, and games to bolster his past successful rush percentage. I think the floor is a rotational talent to a scheme-specific starter. The first step pop, I think, is missing that would really take him to another level, but I do think he plays with heavy hands. I do think he has pretty good play diagnosis, but he's not a guy that, kind of like Landon Jackson, you get him isolated on the edge and he has to be a reactive athlete. I think that's some of where he struggles the most. And there's times where when he's out on the edge and he's tested at the point of attack on that side, I think he can kind of get caught when he has to play with contact and open his hips to kind of open with the point of attack. So as a run defender, I think that's where the big limiting factor is for him. And then I do wish he had a little bit more explosive elements to his game. But I think he has the power elements to his game to be a high floor player.
I think we see him pretty similarly as well. And I like that he's an ascending player, which, indicates there's some ceiling there to continue to developing into. Did you say James Pierce's name yet?
Yes. He was edge 8 for me.
I had him at 10, and boy, like, talk about the opposite of where I was at with some players. He's really quick, but I'm not sure what other redeeming qualities he has. Like, I thought he got stuck at the apex of his rush a ton. Like, I was looking for more cornering ability to complement the burst elements that exist with James Pierce. I think he's a very incomplete profile as an overall prospect. So
I think there's a lot to like about the pass rush profile, but the concern that exists here is the lack of power and functional strength. So I think he's kind of a designated pass rusher early in his career, but I do think there's physical growth and development that has to happen. And anytime you get into that world and that realm of you're looking to, I don't want to say change the body composition, but
6'5".
Yeah. So he's tall and he's got
32, a little over 32.
Yeah, he's got sufficient length.
32 and 3/4. So yeah, it's sufficient.
Definitely a player that, if you ask me September versus now, I've cooled off on, and it feels like the football world is generally in that ballpark as well.
Yeah,
a weird testing result for him too. He only jumped 31 on the vert.
Yeah, you'd expect that to be better. Did he do any other tests?
So he ran the 40, did the broad, and he did the vert. His 40 was a 4.47, but the 10-yard was a 1.56.
I'm not surprised he didn't do the agilities. I'm not sure that would have went well for him.
Think he can bend?
Not for a guy that if you're going to be this type of player, I wanted more. That's how I felt.
So the original comp that I had was back in September was like Brian Burns, but I think he's a little bit more Kimoko Toure.
Kimoko, just stay healthy, man. Can't.
Kimoko Toure would have been a great player if he could have stayed healthy, right? But I think that's a little bit more in line of kind of what my expectations are for Pierce.
All right, we will get into the next wave here. Talk about some of those late day 3, maybe late day 2, early day 3 guys that we like. Folks, be sure to stick with us.
All right. So I'm through. I've disclosed up through 11 with Landon Jackson. Do you want me to give my third round bucket, which is 8 players deep?
Yeah, everyone that qualifies as a day 2 grade for you.
Okay, so Braden Swinson, LSU, is 12 for me. Jared Ivey, Ole Miss, is 13. Josiah Stewart, Michigan, is 14. Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss is 15. Jordan Birch from Oregon is 16. Kyle Kennard, South Carolina, 17. Jack Sawyer, Ohio State, 18. Barron Sorrell, Texas, is 19.
All right, 11, I have Ashton Gelati out of Louisville.
You did like him.
How could you not? Yeah, he's a fun player. I mean, I wish he had a little bit more length, but geez. Very technical player that has good functional strength, like a dense build. A lot of different ways that he can beat blocks. And he's got some alignment versatility that maybe you don't suspect out of him, but he certainly can play in the B gaps a little bit too. So that's 11. 12 is Barron Sorrell out of Texas.
Oh, you like Barron Sorrell. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a high floor there where I think there's a balanced skill set there that I thought was better than some of the other guys that are in this range. 13, Olu Oladejo, the edge out of UCLA. What a story that is. That was 12 or 13?
13, I believe.
Okay, 14 is Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss. 14 is Josiah Stewart out of Michigan. 15, I have Jordan Birch out of Oregon. 16, Braden Swinson out of LSU. 17, Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. That would complete my top 3 round grades.
So you're down on Jack Sawyer, confirming? Not in this bucket.
Yeah, I actually have a 3-4 on him. I think of Jack Sawyer is like he's going to have a Chris Kelsey type career. I'm not sure if that's a name that means much to you, but just like a Sam Hubbard type career.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like projects as a sufficient level starter. It's going to play really hard. I think there's some limitations to the skill set, but I don't know. I wouldn't. Late 3, early 4 is kind of the range that I think is appropriate for him.
Yep, I have him as a late 3 too, but that's a player I still every once in a while I see projected much higher, like top 40.
Ohio State edge rusher, that'll help you.
Right, yeah, the big play in the Natty win was unblocked and ran down Quinn Ewers. So, just to illustrate how tight this bucket is for me, though. Josiah Stewart, Princely, Birch, Kennard, and Sawyer all have the same grade.
I get it.
And they're a half a point behind Jared Ivey.
I get it. What do you think about this Josiah Stewart?
If he had a little bit different build, I think he'd be a lot more popular player, right?
I think he's got the Shaq Barrett build.
Come on, it's the scar tissue there. You can't mention Shaq Barrett around me yet.
I didn't. That wasn't intentional, but I remember Shaq Barrett. I thought it was very similar to Josiah Stewart.
Yeah, 6'1", 249, 31 and 7/8" arms, but the wingspan's 79, so that's 30th percentile. So you have a player that's 2nd percentile height, 13th percentile weight, 5th percentile arm length. At least we get 30th percentile wingspan. It helps us out a little bit.
Yeah.
If he had more of a prototypical build, if he was 6'3", if he had 30, not even 34s, like if he had 33s, I think people would talk about this guy dramatically different. Now, I do think because of his build, there's a certain kind of role that you're limited to project for how you're going to play. But he plays with leverage and power. Like he uses 6'1" to his advantage.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it really easy to like him as a guy who is bursty and has good body control, but then can roll up underneath your pads and really wall you back. And I think he's got great pass rush variety that he could use to his advantage. Not necessarily dissimilar to how Yannick Ngakoue used his stature as well.
Man, I think odd front defenses should really be excited about him. Think about him in Minnesota. I mean, not necessarily like specifically that the Vikings need him, but that type of defense and the Alex Highsmith type role that he gets to play with Pittsburgh, I can see it for sure. He was the guy that got me excited. He's easy to like. Really, there's a play temperament that it's super likable. This Olu Oladejo out of UCLA,
great story.
Now. Come on now, this guy's playing off-ball linebacker like the first 2 games of the season, and then he switches to the edge and shows what he shows on tape with like pretty much no real opportunity to learn how to play it. Quick, long, bendy, powerful at the point of attack. I think he's got some density. He's 6'3", 260, but I think there's like a compactness to his build that really helps him be firm at the point of attack. Motor's off the charts. Like
you'd have fallen in love with him at the Senior Bowl if you saw how he acted during practice.
Oh God,
he was that.
He's that guy,
buddy. Like fully charged battery every day, hyping his own guys up, scrap king, trash talking, dapping his guys up. The guy who had a handshake felt like every guy on the team.
I'm into it. I'm into it even more. Raise him up. I got to redo my rankings here.
So I think high variance projection because you don't know how that's going to break, right? But just from an attitude and a way he carried himself throughout the process, and obviously there's an athletic profile that's worth getting excited about. Like if you want to use that as a tiebreaker against and foil it against guys like Jack Sawyer and Kyle Kennard and guys that just don't really move the needle for you as far as like what the ceiling is of their skill sets, I think it makes it a very easy player to kind of upsell because of the upside, but then also like the intangibles element of it.
100%. Give me him over the guys you just said all day long.
Yeah. And for me, he is the first 4th round grade that I have. So he's right on the cusp of that. I would not be surprised if I end up bumping his grade. Just if I get him a half a point, he's going to end up passing like 6 names just because of how tight it is. And
tight.
But that is a total high variance projection that is going to be a challenging one. Because how far does the athleticism get you? How long does it take you to develop the rush stuff? Did you have any other sleeper names names that you didn't get into here on the show?
I still like Jared Ivey despite the testing. And you said Danico Autry's always been the comp. You know what? The RAS score for Jared Ivey was a 2, and Danico Autry is a 3.19. So,
well, I think it's affirmation. Like, this is not a traditional
he's just not
right.
He's not. Yeah.
But yeah, I was ready to come in here guns blazing before the combine with Jared Ivey and top 8 edge in a class, 2nd round. Nope.
Yeah.
Just realistically, you got to look at the profile and you got to reel it back in a little bit because there's it's not a great precedent there. But like him and Jordan Birch are the 2 guys that I think blur the lines the most of inside outside type guys.
Give Ivy Birch's athleticism.
Oh my God.
We've got a 1st round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. maybe Texas A&M even could have got some production.
Right.
That's a great call out as far as like Birch. Ivy's got all the football IQ in the world, and I think Birch is more of just the natural athlete.
Yeah.
As 2 guys that kind of have to live in that same world. Couple guys for me that I would shout out is kind of day 3 sleep. I don't want to call them sleepers, but guys that I could see it working in the right situation with as we wrap up here. David Walker from Central Arkansas. If you like Josiah Stewart, David Walker's cut from the same cloth. He just happens to play at Central Arkansas instead of Michigan. So that doesn't help his cause for visibility. Ja Joyner, really productive or not productive, but very toolsy, unproductive player at Minnesota who just, you kept waiting for him to put everything together and it hasn't quite happened. But that's a kind of the day 3 swing of the bat. If you want a tools guy that you want to get in house and maybe it clicks while he's there, Joyner has big time tools. And then Q Robinson from Alabama, who has some injury type stuff, but has really good power for the guy that's playing around 250. Little Tim Williamsy, to invoke another Alabama.
There's a name.
Draft Dudes alumni Tim Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I kind of got some of those vibes from Q as a pass rusher. So there's a couple guys I have great on day 3 to give a little shout out to as well. So it's going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We'll be back again tomorrow, and then we have takes on Friday. So we hope to see you all